Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Macquarie's Postgraduate Careers in Focus. I'm Connor, and I'm a current student at Macquarie University, and today's focus is on the careers the new Master of Laws in Corporations, Human Rights, and Sustainability can help you attain. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Macquarie University land, the Wallamadigal people of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since the dreaming. We pay our respects to elders both past and present. I'd like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. As we allow some time for attendees to join us online, please note that this session is being recorded and will be shared with you after the event. If you have any questions throughout this session, please put them in the question and answer box below. We'll answer them during a live session later. Now, we have a really insightful session planned for you. We'll start off with an interview exploring the careers a Master of Laws can lead to with Dr. Ebony Birchall and Dr. David Birchall. Dr. David Birchall is a senior lecturer at Macquarie University Law School, whose research investigates business-related human rights issues, with a focus on socioeconomic rights and the marketization of essential resources. He has published extensively in the field of business and human rights, including the International and Comparative Law Quarterly, Business and Human Rights Journal, University of California Law Business Journal, and Transnational Legal Theory. David co-edited the Edward Elgar Research Handbook on Human Rights and Business, with the second edition forthcoming in 2025, and co-edits the Springer book series, Business, Human Rights, and the Environment. He's presented his work at Oxford, Harvard, the University of New South Wales, and many other universities worldwide. David completed his PhD at City University of Hong Kong in 2019. Now, Dr. Ebony Birchall is a lecturer at Macquarie University Law School and Deputy Director of the Business and Human Rights Access to Justice Lab. Ebony runs Macquarie Law School's Strategic Litigation Clinic and convenes refugee law and torts. Ebony researches strategic litigation and other mechanisms used to bridge power imbalances and provide access to justice for survivors of human rights abuse. Prior to joining academia, Ebony practiced as a lawyer for over a decade at the forefront of Australian-based strategic litigation. Her notable causes include the Manus case class action, Australia's largest human rights case at the time of resolution, and the 2014 immigration data breach representative complaint on behalf of almost 10,000 people from refugee backgrounds, resulting in Australia's first compensatory order for a mass privacy breach. Welcome, both of you, Ebony and David. Now, just to clear any confusions, you're not related, even though you have last names, but it's really funny, and we're really glad to have you both here tonight. So why don't we just start with a general run through of the field and this course? Ebony, why don't you begin?
Sure. So this course, it's called the Master of Laws for Corporations, Human Rights and Sustainability. So it really relates to a very up-and-coming area that's attracting a lot of attention at the moment, and it's centered around how to regulate corporations. So as most people would understand, multinational corporations are some of the most powerful entities in the world. They're, sometimes more powerful than governments and states. And so it's a big puzzle, a big question of how to actually properly regulate entities with that much power. And of course, it's very interrelated with climate issues, environment issues, because corporations have big impacts on the environment as well. And of course, it also relates into human rights, because corporations, all of their operations impact people in some way. And so there's that human rights aspect to it as well. So this course, yeah, it gives a good understanding of those topics, and there's a range of core subjects and then electives that the course covers as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ebony. If we kind of deep dive more into the course, who's behind it, David, you might be able to give us more details on who the teaching team is behind this master's.
Yeah, thank you very much, Connor. Yeah, absolutely. So, so both Ebony and I teach on this master's alongside experts in environmental law, for example, financial crime. But one of the people who have really led the development of this master's is the name in the middle slide here, Professor Surya Dev, who is a professor at Macquarie Law School. He's a very well-known, very reputable scholar of business human rights, and also, as it says, a UN Special Rapporteur on the right to development, which means so this is a United Nations role, and it means he's got this position, which is the kind of foremost expert, I suppose, on the right to development. So he's in this UN role, reporting, as they say, on the right to development, so how to improve it, how it's working around the world in different countries. So he's in that very prestigious role, which means he's a bit busy, too busy to be here today, unfortunately. I think he's flying somewhere for a UN trip right now. But he's a great expert to have, incredibly knowledgeable in business human rights, very good at developing projects as well. Which I mean, maybe I could just jump into that, Connor, now as well. Some of the projects that students are working on at the moment. Um, so we have the Business and Human Rights Access to Justice Lab that Ebony and myself are both deputy directors of, and Surya is the director. So this is the Business Human Rights Access to Justice Lab. So what this is it's a kind of research center, you could say, designed to tackle real world problems in business and human rights. So what that means is any kind of situation where potentially a corporation is causing harm to human rights. I know Ebony is working on one in Colombia right now. Um, and there have been several others to do with how corporations should be regulated, various harms around the world, that we always, or so far as possible, we have research assistants from students, sometimes undergrad, sometimes postgrad or PhD, helping out. And it's a really, really good place to get that hands-on kind of experience, just exactly the same as you would be in the working world. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. Maybe we'll deep dive into what the Access to Justice Lab is for those that might not have heard it before, and have a look at how students can gain industry connection opportunities. Ebony, why don't you begin with this one?
Sure. So David's already given a little bit of information on the lab. So the lab, it's sort of set up to do a few things. So first, it is a research center. So we do research and publish our research. So that's one arm of it. But we also do a lot of capacity building and training. So for example, I'm running a course in a month or so for human rights lawyers and defenders across Southeast Asia to teach them how to use different legal and non-legal strategies. And then we also we also help communities. So we help communities who are being abused by big businesses, and in giving them advice and sort of strategies on how to challenge human rights abuses. And we get students involved in these projects. So for example, just recently, a couple of months ago now, a student-led project where we benchmarked the performance of the top 25 companies in Australia. So basically what we did was we looked at those top 25 companies, and this again was student-led. So the students did this research. They looked at the policies of these companies and assessed them against international human rights standards. And what that showed was that Australia's top companies actually are not living up to those human rights standards that the world expects of them. And the students did that research as part of a program, a subject essentially that they get course credit for. So it's really awesome because it means the world is getting helped through the students' research, but also it's part of this actual course. You can do a subject on responsible business conduct in practice. And as part of that course that you get credit for, you get to contribute to these really impactful research projects.
Awesome. Thanks, Ebony. And it's a good really segue into what this course is. Can you Can you talk to what students will study, and is there opportunities for them to specialize or look into areas that are, passion areas or interest areas for them?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you've got the slide there because I'm not going to remember all these. But basically, there are essential units. So here on the left, you can see business and human rights is an essential unit. And then, of course, environmental law and sustainable development. So they're your sort of core units that all students in this master's will do. And then around those core units, you can choose electives. So this is where you get to tailor the course to suit your interests and professional needs. So there's a whole list there. So things like anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing law, corporate governance law, and then we've got things like climate change law, anti-discrimination law, international human rights law. You can even do Indigenous peoples in the law. So yeah, it really depends on what you're interested in and what your professional goals are. I'll just highlight that subject that I was just talking about, where you get to contribute to practical projects, that one's the responsible business conduct in practice subject. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities. Yeah, for different types of subjects. And there's actually one other thing I forgot to mention when we're talking about the Business and Human Rights Access to Justice Lab. We also have another research centre in the law school here at Macquarie called the Centre for Environmental Law. And that's another research centre that's also obviously relevant to this course. And both of the centres will regularly host events where we get external researchers or non-profits or people in the sector, different stakeholders, even government officials, come and take part in research events, and students are invited to those events. So that's just another way that students get exposed to real cutting edge issues in these topics.
So during their masters, it seems that there's really good industry connection opportunities available for students in kind of the areas that most interest them. And David, this is probably a really good question for you. We'll have a lot of students come through this masters. Where are students going to end up? Where do we see students go after studying?
Yeah, thanks very much, Connor. Yeah, I mean, that's a key question, of course, what kind of job this might lead to, what kind of industry this might lead to. And I think one thing in designing this master's was we wanted it to be to open up a lot of doors potentially. And I think one thing that I know Ebony has already hinted at, but so the area of corporate accountability laws broadly, we could say. So this is accountability for harm to the environment, harm to people, whatever it might be. It really is a massively growing area of law. Law firms looking at it more and more innovative tactics in the area. And in terms of jobs, corporations particularly regularly now having sustainability departments, human rights departments, ESG departments, with a lot of people in there, because complying with these regulations is quite complicated. There's a lot of regulation in different areas all over the world, and it is a real growth area, I think, for jobs. And it's an area where people with extensive legal experience, people with decades in the industry, are having trouble because it is a lot of new laws that are coming out just in the last few years. So they're looking for the recent grads, the new grads, because they're the people who have been taught this kind of stuff. And I think that was a fundamental reason for for starting this master's and for seeing the value in this master's for us, because we thought this is actually knowledge that law firms need, corporations need, obviously rights holders need as well, because it's better for rights holders if corporations are respecting these laws and understand these laws. And so we thought it'd be really valuable to teach people about these. And then, yeah, as you see here, so some career examples. So, yeah, so corporations and law firms could be two of the big ones, but certainly government as well. Yeah, I mean, lots of different agencies within government, human rights centers and so on, and international development centers, that kind of thing. Jobs like ESG officer. So I think most corporations, even now, probably medium-sized corporations, having ESG departments or sustainability. Supply chain manager, risk management specialist. These are very like core things that you need to know what the laws and regulations are, and a lot of these are human rights based or environment based laws. So definitely a growth area for jobs, and a good sort of extra string to have in your bow if you're going into a legal career, I think, definitely, yeah.
Awesome. And so is this relevant for someone that might not be in a legal area as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. Because I mean, if you're coming into this masters, I mean, whatever your background is, I think that kind of varied knowledge is definitely good. I mean, obviously, a lot of these are business related roles as well, so anything with a business experience too. But I mean, yeah, I mean, certainly sort of anything in the sort of politics and social science, sociology, anything like that is giving you that's giving you quite a well-rounded kind of base for like why we need these laws, the situations that are kind of calling for these laws, any kind of specialist knowledge on different countries' problems or different industry problems, any of that. I think this knowledge of these corporate accountability laws on top of um, yeah, various kinds of knowledge is going to be really, really relevant. I definitely don't think this is just something that law students who have done undergrad law who want to go work in very hard law kind of field. It's definitely not just for that. And I think just for example, I mean, a sustainability consultant, you're going to need some knowledge of the corporate accountability landscape is going to be really, really important, but sustainability could have a more of a scientific edge to it as well. So definitely lots of options, and I think this is something that a lot of companies would this kind of corporate accountability, human rights, business human rights kind of knowledge would be very, very valuable to a lot of companies today. Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be a very desired and a very wide course available.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
awesome. Ebony, we might jump into there's some awesome skills and stuff that people will develop. What facilities are available as someone kind of does this masters? And what other support services are available if they haven't touched academics in a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you raised the question of facilities because it gives us a chance to talk about the Michael Kirby building, which is very beautiful. I don't know if people are familiar or have heard the news, but Macquarie University has just built a brand new building that's called the Michael Kirby building. And it is very lovely. So there is that facility, and our postgraduate students have a special lounge within our building where they get to hang out and study and that kind of thing. So there's that facility. And then in terms of support for students who haven't been a student for a while, I guess, I would say that, Macquarie is a very collegial environment, and all the teachers here understand that people come from all different backgrounds, and some people are, straight out of high school and into uni and then maybe doing a post-grad degree, but we have a whole range of students coming to us. A lot of students come to us from professional backgrounds. I was talking with a student last year who was a doctor and been a doctor for, over a decade, and he decided to retrain and do law and then came back to uni. And so there's all kinds of students that we get at Macquarie. And all of our degrees, all of our courses that we run, they're very accessible. So we explain the information that we're teaching. We also train people on practical skills. So we do things like having real world case studies in our classes. We have engaging debates. We try and train students to have professional skills, not just knowledge, because I think that's really important these days. So we're very supportive in the way that we teach.
Awesome. Well, it seems great that there's a bridging between that theory and that practical, and that students will have that opportunity to really engage and develop those skills that they're going to need to thrive beyond university. We might move on to an opportunity to understand how to apply and the next steps for the Master of Laws Corporations in Human Rights and Sustainability masters. If you do have any questions while this is being told, or if you have any questions pop up in your head about anything that Ebony or David has said, please put it in the question answer box below, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. But to apply for this course, you'll need the UAC code, which can be found online, and that just needs to be included in your preferences. Now, when you're ready to apply, you'll need proof of Australian or New Zealand citizenship or permanent residency. You'll also need evidence of all your academic qualifications, including any transcripts you have, and if required, a proof of English language proficiency. Now, once you have everything together, you can submit your application and take that next step towards advancing your career in this really exciting field. So our next intake for this program is this year for session 2. The application deadline is the 7th of July, so coming up, with classes commencing on the 28th of July. Now, we really recommend you begin that application process now to allow any ample time to address any issues that may arise. Well, now comes that opportunity for the live questions. So if you have any, please write them down the bottom. If we don't get to your question, or if you have any further queries that pop up after this session, please book a one-on-one consultation with our team. We're here to help and ensure that you have all the information that you need to move forward from this step. So let's have a look and see what questions we have. So we've got a question that's general. What's something really exciting happening in this area? What's exciting you right now? David, let's start with you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a great question. I mean, I suppose it depends who you are, what you find exciting, right? I mean, the biggest change that's happened in this field in recent years is what's termed human rights due diligence laws, which are very exciting if you're a lawyer, right? But maybe not so much to other people, I don't know. But the thing, so what these are is laws that say corporations have to monitor and check there are no human rights violations in their supply chain anywhere, right? So if you're a big company with a global supply chain, like Apple, for example, they need to monitor to make sure that everywhere in their supply chain, in China, in Africa, where they're sourcing minerals from all over the place, right? There are no human rights violations anywhere. And one of the reasons this is exciting, and these are European laws so far, only in Europe, probably to be expanded soon. One of the exciting things about this is European countries making laws which are then essentially binding on China, on Australia, on the USA. So very unusual, very unusual, very strange kind of laws. But this is one of the things that's driving a lot of the sort of concerns for companies and well, new jobs in the field as well, to be honest, because there are these new laws coming in, and suddenly every company, well, every big company in the world has to comply. So yeah, they need people in Australia and all over the world to be looking at compliance with these laws, right? So this is definitely something that's exciting and kind of changing the field. So yeah, I would say that.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Ebony?
Ooh, me too. Well, I mean, this is just what makes me excited. I don't know if it makes other people excited, but I get really excited thinking about how to solve the dilemma of multinational corporations existing in multiple jurisdictions. Because as I mentioned before, multinational corporations have so much power and wealth, like often more power and wealth than small nation states. So they're so powerful and they have so much impact in the world. And yeah, so that sort of regulatory problem of how do we properly make sure that these corporations, do the right thing and aren't damaging the environment or aren't, abusing communities. For me, it's really, really challenging question, but I find it really exciting to sort of really get stuck into that question and figure out some like real world solutions, not just hypothetical solutions, but solutions that will actually work.
Awesome. That's really exciting to hear that there's so many different options and exciting things happening in this kind of ever-changing and super relevant field. One of the questions that we received does completing this master's register me as a corporations lawyer or a human rights lawyer that's ready to take on clients in cases where there've been a breach of human rights or in corporation situations? Ebony?
Yeah, well, if you To become a lawyer in New South Wales, you have to do specific requirements that the Law Society sets out. So I would be looking at the Law Society's criteria for what you need to do to become a registered lawyer. And part of that registration requirement is you have to do a law degree, but then you also have to do practical legal training after your law degree. So what I would say though is this master's program is aimed at giving you specialist knowledge and understanding on corporations and human rights and sustainability in particular. So if you wanted to become a lawyer and go into those fields, I would say that this degree would put your resume ahead of the pack in terms of you having that specialist knowledge and experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ebony. So for this course, do you have to have studied a law degree, or can you just use this as a kind of an interest area?
Shall I take that one? Yeah.
Go for it,
Yeah,
Dave.
no, you definitely don't need to have studied a law degree, and I think we definitely would hope that we'd have quite a wide range of different knowledges and skills in the room, right? I mean, I teach the business human rights unit here along with Surya, and yeah, I mean, because the two core course units here are business human rights and environmental law and sustainable development, I think the unit's called. So even just from that, you see that's quite a wide sort of, that's not just legal, right? I mean, business human rights involves business, clearly. It involves questions of politics, and then environmental law and sustainable development. The sustainable development side of that is very much on politics, other elements of social science and planning as well, that kind of thing. So definitely, I think it could be really useful for someone with a law background, but also I think maybe even more useful perhaps for someone without a legal background, but looking to transition into not necessarily becoming a solicitor or a barrister, but working with legal kind of problems, because as Ebony was saying, right, so this degree alone won't allow you to be a barrister, for example, but it will allow you to deal with legal questions within companies or in NGO or in government roles or whatever it was. So yeah, I think that definitely it's a wide scope of different skills and abilities is what we would imagine would be in the room when we're teaching. Yeah.
And that flows on to kind of that next question really well, is how does this program prepare students for working in international business, sustainability, and human rights role? You touched on it before, but do you not elaborate a little bit more in how we set up our students?
Yeah, shall I take that again? Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think I think it would. So firstly, you're going to get some very specific knowledge that the vast majority of lawyers do not have in corporate accountability laws, right? Corporate accountability laws and environmental laws, and obviously you look at the electives with a whole wide range of other areas there too, right? That's going to be knowledge that most law students who have done an LLB don't have, because most are not doing corporate accountability type work. It's also it's going to give you hopefully that sort of wider, not just legal knowledge, but wider sort of social political knowledge of the kind of problems that we're facing here, right? Including, as Ebony said, about the power of multinationals and the difficulties of regulating and the harm they cause. So yeah, so how will it set you up for working in international business, say, and sustainability? Well, that knowledge will be valuable to companies. We'll also look at your professional skills. We'll also hopefully give you, there will be opportunities at least to work on practical projects that will be really good for your CV. So I think it should be really, really good for anyone looking to go into these kind of international business, international sustainability fields. It is a very international team with a lot of international knowledge, and a lot of what we'll be learning, particularly in business human rights, will be internationally focused rules. So it should set you up very well, but of course, all these jobs are very competitive, as I'm sure everyone watching knows. But it should set you up well, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. We've got less than a minute left, so I'm going to do a quick fire question for each one of you. The first question is, one piece of advice for someone moving into this space. Ebony, why don't you start? What's one quick advice you'd give?
Follow your passions, I guess, has been like the best advice for me in my own career. Yeah, because your passions is what's going to make you feel fulfilled and yeah, and take you to the places where you want to go.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ebony. David, what's your one piece of advice?
Ebony took a good one. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna give a similar one, but yeah, just try to understand what you want to do and have that as your goal, because I think that worked for me as well. And yeah, if you have a good understanding of what you want and how you're going to get there, then that's going to help you. So a very clear-eyed view of what you want, and then that should help you get there. That would be my advice. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, David. And with that, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and a special thanks to you, Ebony and David. We look forward to welcoming you all at Macquarie University soon. Take care and have a good night.